So the trickster is a really weird and fucked up archetype from mythology and folklore, and from spiritual traditions too. I'm not going to go into the myths of each of these tricksters, okay? But instead, I want to make an argument that the trickster mythology is not there to be some sort of random story about how some asshole fucks up society. Okay, and that's not the point. Tricksters like Loki, Hermes, Elegba, even the Joker, these stories are a purification ritual. They are a manual. And cultures and tribes have taken these stories very, very seriously so that they don't recite these stories about tricksters willy-nilly. It's only at certain times of the year, under certain circumstances, because they know that that trickster energy, that trickster feeling is contagious, incredibly so, and it's incredibly empowering. If you want to know what the trickster energy feels like, the classic example I always use is the reaction that little kids have when they're in the middle of a fucking boring math class, okay? And they're spacing out. All of a sudden, a thunderstorm hits, and all the power goes out in class. What do all the kids do? They scream, they yell, right? And they run around. They're in the darkness, so they try to, maybe maybe one kid will, under the cover of darkness, run over to another and like smack them, right? And then run back to their seat, right? They do all sorts of weird shit. This is that energy, that sort of excitement, that sort of, I have complete anonymity. I'm invisible now. I can do whatever I want. That is the trickster energy, okay? So if you're trying to meditate on the trickster energy, meditate on moments like that. So the trickster is an archetype that is ultimately, like I said, a manual for purification. Now, what are the characteristics of these tricksters? Now, tricksters in mythology, they will walk around nude in public without caring in the slightest. They will eat excrement. They will have insatiable lust. They will deceive. They'll lie to you. They will play pranks on you because they think it's funny. Even extreme pranks, okay, like killing someone close to you, they think it's funny. They embody incredible laughter and joy. They have a sense of reckless abandon, that they just do what they want and they don't care the consequences. They do this by transgressing taboo and social norms and standards. They shock people to get a reaction. Like when I was a kid, I was amazed at how much power I had over other people. All I had to say was the word cunt, and people lost their minds. And I couldn't, it was so hilarious to me because I couldn't for the life of me realize why they would feel so strongly over a word that is ultimately meaningless. It's a vibration coming out of my mouth. It's just a word. It's a sound. It's meaningless. Okay? And I noticed that certain people would get more or less offended. It was relative, right? So I realized that people were offending themselves, right? That's all it was. They were offending themselves because of what they thought that word meant. It was hilarious. And the implications of using that word in society, what they thought that was. And ultimately, it's all bullshit. It's all an illusion. They do it to themselves. So that's a really good example of like shocking people to get a reaction. Tricksters have complete innocence. They seem, I don't know how else to say it, they just seem completely innocent even though they're totally not. They have a total lack of self-consciousness. They don't care about themselves. They don't take themselves seriously. Their ego, seriously. They don't have an ego. Once you're eating shit in public, I mean, what kind of ego can you possibly have? They engage in deliberate humiliation. They will put themselves in situations where people make fun of them and humiliate them. They do it on purpose because they think it's funny. And then they have this aspect of lust and drunkenness and getting high, this Dionysian orgiastic bliss that they're so They're not even addicted to it because they're not addicted to anything. They have complete self-control, but at the same time, they can let themselves go into this orgiastic bliss state. They completely defy categorization. Now, the connection to magic comes in because tricksters are considered divine. Okay? Not only that, but like Hermes, if he wanted to go straight up to heaven, he could. If he wanted to dive right down to the depths of hell, he could. If he wanted to walk around the earthly realm, he could. There is no restrictions. This is not some angel that's restricted to heaven because, ooh, I'm holy. No, not at all. These spirits, these archetypes can travel up and down the ladder of reality without restriction. They are entirely liberated, entirely free. That's the point. Mystics who have displayed trickster qualities, like Saint Francis and a number of Indian mystics, some Indian mystics covered themselves in excrement and then went into the middle of town and started handing out cow shit, manure basically, for people to eat and enticing them to eat it, right? And people were disgusted, right? The guy's a lunatic. Or St. Francis walking around completely nude in public, as a way of saying, I'm done with this society, I'm done with your social rules, I'm going to follow Christ now. These people have developed incredible powers. St. Francis, he was said to be able to talk to animals. He was able to have direct revelation from God. He experienced stigmata. He experienced visions. He levitated when he prayed. The Indian mystic I mentioned, some say he was able to walk through walls. He was able to multiply food. Okay? These guys had power, and they were weird. So there was this connection to magic power to the trickster archetype. Hartman did research into boundaries because all tricksters have no boundaries. Okay, they find a boundary and they destroy it because it liberates them. So they have utterly no boundaries. And Hartman's research was about people he categorized as having thin or thick boundaries. Someone with thick boundaries would be your typical, office executive or manager, uptight, follows the rules, this is society, right? Or perhaps a blue-collar worker, who's very narrow-minded perhaps, small-minded, not very bright, but goes along with society rigidly, okay? Then there are thin boundaries, people like the artists, the mystics, the clairvoyants, the intuitive, the psychics, okay? The people who dream, who lucid dream. These are people who have very thin boundaries. Think of a child, okay? A child, and in the grimoires, look at the grimoires like the Greek magical papyri, or the Goetia, or the Key of Solomon, or the Hygromantia. These legitimate historical magical books constantly used little kids as scryers. Little kids would be used as the magician called upon the spirits because the child would be able to see them when the magician may not be able to see them. And it was this sense of childish purity that allowed them to do that. But in all of these manuscripts, they keep talking about purity, and purity is never defined once. Not one fucking time, okay? And so as Christianity picked up the magical techniques from Greece and Egypt, it thought that magical purity was only on the right-hand path. So it said, hey, before your magic rituals, you have to purify yourself. So you have to fast, stop eating food. You have to abstain from sex. Don't have sex with your wife or anyone else. Don't drink. Pray every day. Meditate. Stay away from society. Keep your mind totally focused on God the entire time. When you purify, be good to the poor, right? Do good things for people. Be compassionate. Get rid of all your hatred or anger or hurt from other people and just live a state of complete love, compassion, right? That was the only orientation to the idea of purification that the grimoires have, because it's all right-hand path. What I'm saying is that there's a left-hand path purification, which is the complete opposite and is even more powerful. So Hartman's research into boundaries, just to go back into that, Hartman's research, he found out that people who had thin boundaries were also the same people who had nightmares, who had dreams, who were able to lucid dream, who were creative. People with thick boundaries didn't experience any of that. And also, people with thin boundaries also experienced much more paranormal phenomena, like seeing ghosts and spirits, and they did significantly better on psychic tests to test psychic abilities, okay? The thick boundary people were fucking useless. They were basically animals. They had no human spirit in them. Okay? So this shows that having thin boundaries, having a very open, flexible worldview, okay, is very connected to magic power. Okay? And again, this is thick and thin boundaries. What would be a priest? A priest would be someone with thick boundaries. And he's in a spiritual position. Right? Imagine how useless, that person is spiritually or magically, and yet he's in a position where he needs to have those powers. It's absolutely incredible. And I'm not trying to say that the right-hand path is useless. It's not. What I'm trying to say, and this is corroborated in Indian traditions, where the left-hand path came out of, in case you don't know, it has an Indian origin. But in India, the general consensus is that if you stick to the right-hand path, you might gain liberation in about 7 lifetimes. Okay? That's assuming that you reincarnate into a new body, you remember that you're supposed to be on a spiritual path, and then you stick to the right-hand path. Okay? That's a lot of maybes. Okay? It's almost a certainty that you're not going to do that 7 lifetimes in a row. You're almost guaranteed to never happen. And the tradition is, on the left-hand side, it is said that you can gain liberation in this life right now. It's much quicker because it's much more extreme. It's much more powerful. And so I can't help but feeling that there's a left-hand path purification articulated within the trickster archetype folklore and mythology that has been covered up and concealed because of how powerful it is. That if we use the left-hand path purification, we don't need to starve ourselves. We can gain magical power through pleasure, not pain. So moving on. So again, Hartman's research corroborates this idea that having a more flexible worldview, not categorizing things in rigid boxes, you're able to experience more spiritual phenomena. And this isn't just subjective spiritual phenomena, this is objective spiritual phenomena. That's the key point. Also, there's a lot of talk about liminality with the trickster. The trickster is said to be very liminal because I should probably explain this a little bit. And I was putting this in a book I was writing. So the literature on liminality and the general, like if you go on YouTube, you search liminality, you're not going to find much liminality. Okay, there are picture compilations. Okay, where it says this picture has liminal principles or whatever. And it doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. People are confusing liminality because the academics are using it in ambiguous ways. Liminality, what is really meant by liminality is not a combination of two things. That's not liminal. I want to use 2 examples. There's a difference between someone who's bisexual, okay, which is a combination of heterosexual and homosexual inclinations, right? Desires. There's a difference between that and someone who's asexual, someone who has no sexual feelings for anyone. You see the difference? The person who's asexual is actually the one who's liminal. That's liminality. Liminality means without identification, without categorization. If someone is a combination of 2 things, they're not liminal. They're a means. Okay, a mean, in mathematical sense, a mean is between 2 extremes. That's what a bisexual person is. They're a mean. They're not liminal. Another example is someone who so-called cross-dresses, right? So a man who's cross-dressing as a woman. This is a means. This is a mean because they have male physiology, morphology, but they're wearing female dress. It's a combination of two things, as opposed to say someone who's androgynous. Okay, so if you look at like Buddhist monks, female Buddhist monks, their heads will be shaved, and all the monks are wearing the same thing. And for some of them, it becomes really difficult to figure out if they're a man or a woman. Okay? That is liminality. That is androgyny is liminality because you cannot identify it. You cannot categorize it. It's not a combination of multiple things. So, in the trickster archetype world, in the mythology, in the folklore, you have both things. In fact, the ability to be quote unquote bisexual comes out of the fact that ultimately the trickster is aware that they don't have an identity. That's the realization. That's the big aha moment, is realization that you don't have a fixed personality. And this way of identifying yourself is bullshit. It's a fantasy. It's a hallucination. And so the trickster is free to express themselves in however the fuck they please. They don't box themselves in. Oh, I'm a bisexual today. Oh, I'm a homosexual today. Oh, I'm a heterosexual today. No, they just do whatever they want. They don't categorize it at all. It's completely liberating. That's the point. And so, when it comes to liminality, liminal states will put you in that trickster mindset. What's an example of a liminal state? And a liminal state would be meditation can be liminal, dreams can be liminal, taking psychedelic journeys is extremely liminal, okay? But more to the point, putting yourself into novel contexts. Novelty is so important with this. When you are put into a context that you've never been in before, you don't have an opportunity to identify with it or categorize it or put it in a box because you've never done it before. It's pure novelty. And this is the connection between artsy types and magic power of the trickster. Artsy types are constantly creating new things. They're constantly novel, okay? And that is the path of getting into a liminal state. And so you want to get into a state of complete novelty. This is why dreams are important, because they're very novel. They're very weird. They defy category. Psychedelic journeys, same thing. They defy categories. They're very novel. Meditation, you're basically in a state of nothingness, really. So it's very liminal. I don't know about novel, but it's definitely liminal. It's unusual, especially if you just start the practice. And so, if you were to look at a liminal picture, it'd be very boring. A liminal picture would not be a dark room. That's not liminal. A liminal means novelty. It means something that is extremely unusual that you can't identify. So, for example, say you're on a boat in the ocean, and then you lean over the boat and you look down, straight down. You can't identify shit. It just looks like an infinite abyss. That's liminality. Or if you're driving through fog and you can't see shit, that's liminality. Or if suddenly you see a bright light and it's so overwhelming that you can't see anything else, you can't identify anything in that environment except that light, you don't know what's going on, that's liminality. That's the true state of liminality. So the state of liminality is being put into novel contexts. Why is this important to magic? Because if you look at the spiritual traditions of the left-hand path, like the Agori are extremists who eat shit. They'll eat animal feces. They'll eat garbage. They'll meditate on dead bodies. They may eat dead bodies. They're high often. And all of this is a method of breaking down their personal boundaries, their personal taboos, and the social taboos to liberate them. Now, novelty is important for this, so my criticism of the Agori is that they make this an entire lifestyle, right? Well, obviously, if you've been doing this weird practice for 20 years, it's not weird anymore. It loses its novelty. Okay? So this is, habituation is real. So this is something to keep in mind too. To keep things novel, to keep things exciting, to keep yourself in a state that you break boundaries and that you're not able to identify. Okay? You're not able to identify yourself as a certain thing. You're not able to categorize yourself. This is why mystics would do weird shit, because they're trying to constantly keep themselves in that very empowering state of liberation. Okay? Because you can fall back to sleep. You can go back into routine, right? So you need to constantly do novel shit to keep yourself awake spiritually. So they do more and more extreme stuff. So that's the Agori. Now, Vama Marga is a spiritual path that almost no one knows about in India. And they used sexual practices to break taboo. Okay, so they used to have sexual rituals where they would take an initiate, and the initiate would have this incredibly erotic experience with a young female, right, if they're a male. And the young female would dress in this extremely erotic, provocative way. The two people didn't know each other, so they were complete strangers. Again, novelty. And she was also trained in how to stimulate men. Not to the point of ejaculation. The point was to not ejaculate. The point was to help the man direct this completely overwhelming erotic energy up the body, through the kundalini, through the crown, in order to get illumination. That was the goal, okay? Again, the left-hand path and right-hand path have the same goal, but they do it in different ways. And the Vama Marga tradition was even more extreme, right? Because they continued with this by engaging in incest orgies, right? Again, breaking down those social rules. Like, no, that's disgusting. I can't do that. They broke down those boundaries in order to transgress them so that you get the idea, you get the realization, I'm doing something that I thought would be impossible for me and that couldn't be done. It's against social rules. I can't do this. Okay? I can't imagine doing this, and yet I'm doing it. This gives you the realization that reality is malleable. Reality is able to be manipulated. You're not a victim of reality. You have power over it. You can change reality, and the only reason why you're not doing it is because of your own deluded, self-imposed limitations. And again, these are extreme paths. This is not this is not Sunday school. This is extreme. Okay? They also had sexual orgies with like elderly people, right? People that you would typically consider disgusting or revolting. Again, to destroy the illusion, the categorization of erotic, disgusting, right? Or the trickster archetypes, excrement and food, good, bad, sinner, saint, or saint and demon, sacred, profane. All of these categories were destroyed. This is why Hermes can go down to the depths of hell, or he can go up into the realms of heaven, because he's not restricted in any way. He sees that everything is divine. Everything is made of spirit. And by spirit, I mean life itself. All of spirituality, all of magic is nothing more than life in matter. That's all it is. Okay? And so when you look at the grass, when you look at a tree, when you look at a bird or any animal you wish, we look at another person, okay? Look at you see the air blowing, with the leaves or whatever, or going through the trees. You feel it in your skin. You see that the planet's moving. You see the stars moving. You realize that everything that moves, that has animation to it, has life inside it. And so you are in the same condition as everything else out there. So at a very fundamental level, there's no difference between you and a dog, okay? You just so happen to be born with a human brain that has certain perceptions, but both of you are life in matter. And so this is why St. Francis would say, brother, sun, sister, moon. This is why he would be affectionate with animals, because he'd realize that he's really being affectionate with himself, because all is life in matter. There's no difference. All of us are just a drop of life itself, spirit in matter, and so all is one at a very fundamental level. Okay. So the point of all this is to destroy the illusion of judgment, the illusion of category, and most of all, the tendency to believe that your ideas are empirically or objectively true. Okay? That the way you see the world is the way the world is. That's complete bullshit. No matter what you believe, it's bullshit. You realize that the whole world is ineffable and you can't explain anything. You can't even explain dust. If you really think about it, you can't explain shit. Everything's a miracle. Everything is pure bliss and pure joy, okay? And so you realize that when you engage in orgiastic pleasure, you are exciting the spirit within you, the life within you through this trickster archetype, okay? When you are aroused, you feel the energy in your body. That is nothing less than your spirit waking up because it's being introduced to novelty. Okay? So what would be a good left-hand path purification? Okay, so say you do magic and you want to replace the uptight Abrahamic, or even Egyptian idea of fasting, abstaining, all this like boring shit, and you want to replace it with something more powerful. That would be the left-hand path purification. And that is extreme transgression of your own personal boundaries and comfort zone. Transgress the shit out of them. That would be that's it. That's the purification. You know what I mean? At a very primitive and simple level, you can look at the mirror and say, am I more of a conservative person or am I more of a liberal person? In other words, do I have thick boundaries or thin boundaries? If you have really thick boundaries, if you're more of a conservative person, and say you have a female partner, try couple swapping. Something extreme. Watch your significant other, watch your spouse, your partner get fucked out of their mind. That would be a purification, okay? Because you realize that your idea of this is my partner, right? Possession. I own this. This is mine. Bullshit. Bullshit. The idea of possession, the idea of I own anything is an illusion. You don't. There's no such thing as ownership. It's an idea, right? So for example, say that in your mind you think, well, this is my girlfriend because I have sex with her all the time. I have sex with her, so she's my girlfriend. Well, what if I'm having sex with your girlfriend? Is she my girlfriend now? And you'll say, well, no, because that's just a temporary thing. She's with me most of the time. Oh, so now it has to do with most of the time? Well, I hate to tell you this, but most of the time in life, you're not around each other. You're at work. So, is her boss her partner now because she's around her boss more than you? You see, the idea of ownership, the idea of you are my partner is bullshit. And you realize that the only reason why you two are together is because you are completely free not to, and you choose to be. Okay? You literally choose to keep your bodies close to each other and to talk to each other and to engage with each other. There's no relationship. There's no marriage. There's no spouse. There's no partner. There's no, cheating, marriage, fidelity, vows, picket fence, house, baby. All illusion. There is just two instances of life in matter who are choosing to move their bodies close to each other. That's really all it is. When you realize this, you stop taking the body so seriously, and you realize the important thing is the life within it. And so the idea of insecurity is bullshit because you don't own anything, and so you can't lose anything. The idea of my girlfriend's gonna leave me for someone else. So what? If they do, there's more than one person on the fucking planet. You know what I mean? Like, you can have the same type of relationship with somebody else. It's completely possible. Just look at what you want. If you're a female, the same thing applies. If you guys are in a homosexual gay relationship, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Breaking out of these prescribed boundaries is key for the trickster archetype and this left-hand path purification. What a good rule of thumb is, again, it's supposed to increase the sense of novelty. You're supposed to be put into a liminal state, meaning it's a context you've never been in before. It's completely new, and you don't know what the hell's going to happen. All of this should provoke a feeling of fear and anxiety. That's exactly what you want. If it's not provoking you in that way, then it's worthless. It has no signal value. It's not going to wake up your spirit. It has to be difficult. This is a discipline, okay? It's a purification. Fasting is hard. Well, seeing your partner sleep with someone else is pretty hard too. It's difficult. It's powerful. It's extreme, okay? It's as extreme as not eating for a week, right? These are against our natural animalistic tendencies. The point is to realize you're not an animal. You're a daemon. You are a daemon. You are a spirit. You are a life in matter. And so this idea of, I own this person, or I'm afraid of this happening, I'm afraid of that happening, it's all bullshit. You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, okay? And so transgression of your personal taboos, doing something novel. Again, it doesn't have to be sexual, by the way. Maybe you've never done psychedelics in your life, okay? So maybe you'll try psychedelics, for example. Maybe, what's another good example? I'm going blank right now. Okay, so maybe you've been a vegan your entire life. Eat meat, right? Maybe you've eaten meat your entire life. Go vegan for a week. Eat vegan food for a week. Okay? Get out of your comfort zone. Maybe you consider yourself the most uncreative person in the fucking world. Write a poem. Be creative. Paint something. Okay? Maybe you're very rigidly on a right-hand path religion. Maybe you're very devout. Be bad. Be a sinner on purpose. And here's the point. Find pleasure and joy in the sin. So if you do this couple swap thing, it really should be pleasurable. If you're anxious and angry and frustrated and scared the entire time, and you're not able to transmute those feelings of anxiety into pleasure, then you failed the purification. You have to transmute it into something pleasurable and orgiastic. That's the key of the purification. Then you will be liberated. And it may take a few tries. Like some people really like watching their significant other with someone else for this reason, because they feel liberated. They feel like this is a borderline spiritual experience. Little do they know it's a full-blown spiritual experience. And so another example, maybe you've lived in the city your entire life. Go camping. Go camping out in the woods, deep in the woods. Something novel, something that puts you out of your comfort zone and makes you nervous and scared, and then find pleasure in it and joy. I believe that this is the key to the left-hand path purification. Okay, so far in the world, we've only had right-hand path purifications, but the idea that there's another way of purifying oneself is really important, because often the purification rituals are... A lot of people are opposed to them because they're too religious, they're too uptight, and they think, well, I'm more of a left-hand path, magician or sorcerer or witch or whatever, right? I don't want to do that right-hand path crap, right? But here's the problem: if you don't have anything else, then you have to do the right-hand path purifications. Otherwise, your spells are going to be shit. That's just my opinion. Okay, you have to excite the spirit within you. I mean, the Kundalini is described as a serpent. And the idea of Kundalini yoga is the process of taking a stick and smacking it in the head to wake it up. That's what you're doing. Another key to this is routine. Okay, if you're in a very consistent and predictable routine in your life, for God's sake, break the fuck out of it. Do something completely spontaneous. That is so important. You cannot have any routine to the left-hand path purification. It'll completely... Routine and monotony puts you to sleep spiritually. It makes you feel dead, okay? It makes you feel without life, without vitality. Isn't this true? Don't you feel like a zombie? Right? Don't you feel like, oh, I just feel so uninspired. I feel impotent. I feel stalled out in life. I feel like I can't do anything. I feel so trapped. I feel so blah, right? That's your soul going to sleep. You need to wake it the fuck up. You need to do something extreme in order to do that. Okay, so if you have a ritual coming up, try this left-hand path stuff. Instead of 3 days of fasting and starving yourself, try 3 days of just thinking about the most intense sexual fantasy that you can imagine, okay? And doing it with your partner, okay? And sex is really important. I keep mentioning it because it's a very powerful experience on its own. And when you add this idea of transgression to sex, you have a very overwhelming purification, okay? So maybe your partner is very like straight-laced and very like self-conscious during sex. Maybe you guys should get drunk and maybe they should do something to you that you would never dream they would do. Maybe wear something completely erotic or do something completely erotic or behave in an overly erotic way, just letting themselves go entirely instead of being reserved, right? Just being complete, just reckless abandon all the way. Maybe that's the way to go. So I wanted to offer this and throw this into the world to say that if you're struggling with purification and magic, but you still want to do magic and you're on the left-hand path, this would be the purification to do. This is a scientifically, technically sound way of purifying yourself so that you have spiritual and magical power when you do your spells, and it doesn't rely on fasting, that there's another way, and it's been hidden from society because it's so powerful and so contagious. And so they tried to eliminate it, and they fucked up and failed because we're tricksters, and you can't keep it hidden because we're just going to keep coming up, showing up and flipping your plans upside down. So I hope this was entertaining, and hope you guys use it.